Alright everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So time to do a rig upgrade, I think. So I've had the GT Omega Prime cockpit with the RS12 reclining chair for just over 18 months now, and I think I've worn it out, particularly the chair. So here we are sat in the cockpit, as you can see, and if I apply a little bit of braking and you watch the backrest of the seat, you'll see how much flex there is in it now. And that's only a light bit of braking. If I put full braking on, you can see how much movement we have there in the seat. And what I've found is this is affecting my lower end braking, and particularly my trail braking, I think. So that when I think I'm braking, when I've been watching the curves on the Moza pit stop software, I can see that I'm applying a brake, but there's no actually a brake being applied, just with the amount of flex in the seat. So it's time to change the seat, I think. Not only that we've got the flex, but it makes a bit of a noise now and again. It's not doing it at the moment. Oh, there we go. It started to squeak and click and make all sorts of noise. So I think I've worn out the mechanism in the reclining aspect of the seat. It has had a lot of use over those 18 months though. Many hundreds of hours have been sat in this chair, and I think it's just done its time and time to move on. So unfortunately GT Omega are no longer shipping to here in Cyprus, so I had to look out elsewhere for alternatives, and that's where we've ended up with the new chair. Alright, so here it is. In the end I've decided to go with the Sabelt SRS bucket seat, and this is the deep black version, and as you can see, fiberglass single shell with the 20mm foam padding, and the back is all the foam padding as well, and it's quite rigid. Certainly there's no flex in here at all, and then it's got the standard bucket seat mountings on the side, the two bolts on either side of the chair. So in addition to needing obviously the seat itself, I also ordered the appropriate mounting brackets for going onto the rig. So obviously we've got the left and right brackets there, and then I also added the option to get the seat sliders. So here's the various bits of it, and they're all greasy, so I'll just put it back down again, and that'll hopefully all drop onto the GT Omega Prime cockpit, no problem. So I guess the next step is to get the old chair off, and let's get the new one on. Alright, so as you can see, I've moved the chair fully forward, and I've also moved it fully backwards, and I can clearly see that I've got access to the bolts, the angle brackets onto the Prime frame. So I think the easiest thing to do is going to be drop out the 4 bolts on each corner, and that'll allow me just to lift the chair off, including its sliding mechanism and the rails, and make it easier hopefully to work on the chair underneath. So it'll be a simple case of just undoing these bolts on the horizontal, and we should be able to just undo all the chair and lift it off. So that's what I'm going to do now. Alright, so that's the 4 seat bolts removed, so I should be able to now just lift the rig out, and there we go. And I've got to remember that underneath I've got the haptics for feedback that I connect with SimHub, so I need to remove those from the underneath of the seat. So let me just flip this over, making sure I'm not running into the screen, and I can just slide out the haptics. Oh, I've cable tied them in, I forgot. So let me cut the cable ties wherever they are. There's 1, 2, and there we can see the 2 haptic motors, or whatever you call them, speakers, bolted onto the chair, and then just the wire, and there we go. There is the 2 monocore AR50 exciters. So now I can remove the chair out of the way. And there we have it, one open frame. So obviously the brackets are still in place, so I've got a starting point for when I mount the chair, the new chair, back in. So I guess the next thing is to strip down the old seat and get these frames off, and then work out how to put the sliders on. Alright, so here we are on the underside of the chair, and I've obviously got the slider mechanism, so I can move the two rails up and down and get access to the bolts underneath. And then, armed with one of the wrenches that came with the cockpit, I can now just undo the bolts and release the rails. So there's the first one out. There we go, there's the second one off, and then there's the rail that is part of the cockpit. Put that to the side. And I'll just repeat that on the other side. Second rail off. Okay, so that's us done with the old seat. Now I'm going to keep these sliders because I might see if I can adapt my pedals to fit a slider mechanism on them as well, and I can always try and see if I can use these sliders for that. But in the meantime, that's the chair, that old chair, removed. Alright, so here we have one of the seat sliders. So the seat mechanism, the handle obviously goes in the middle and pulls up to allow you to move the chair. So if I take this, I can actually move this up the way. It's very, very tight though, and so I know that this is on the inside. And also, if I take one of the seat brackets, you can see that the hole dimensions line up with that top, but they don't line up with the bottom. So this has to be the left-hand slider. And if I line it up with my existing bracket, I can see that I need to move one of the angle brackets for this to sit on, and then that'll allow me to fit the two sides of the brackets, and then based on the dimensions I can then adjust the position of these to make sure that everything is sitting in the right position and I can get everything bolted in. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is bolt the bracket onto here. In fact, it'll be that way around. The higher side here goes at the front, and then I can bolt this onto the rails. Alright, so the brackets are now mounted onto the sliders, which are mounted onto the existing rails in the existing position, and I moved everything fully back to make sure everything is sitting square. So one of the hardest things to do was actually to fit the handle in the slider. They're extremely tight onto the fingers of the sliders, so it did need a little bit of persuasion. And the other thing was, on the slider rails there is two plastic end caps. I don't know what they're for, but they were straight at the end and they were actually stopping the bolt holes lining up properly for the real bracket. So just, there's a little screw under there, I just had to loosen them off, pull the little end cap back a bit and tighten it up again, and that allowed me to get the holes to line properly. Other than that, everything's looking alright so far. Next thing is to get the seat on, make sure everything is working correctly, and then tighten everything down. I have left everything loose at the moment just so we can get any alignment issues sorted out to make sure it's all sitting squarely, and then I'll just roll around everything that I've touched and tighten everything back up again. Moving the sliders back and forth, I've got plenty of access into the bolt holes, and apart from that I think everything is relatively straightforward. Just a bit fiddly with one person. Obviously you're wrestling with the seat slider as everything's wanting to twist and move, and I found that putting in the two front bolts onto the existing mounting holes just helped stabilise everything while I was trying to mess about. And then to get the seat slider and everything square, just made sure everything was pushed all the way back, and then the champing stick just helped get the handle into its final position. And that's it for this moment. Alright, so the chair is now mounted in place. All my bolts have been tightened up and I've set it on the bottom two positions on the seat, and everything is looking good. Not a lot else to say other than we'll jump in the rig and I'll do the brake test and just show how much movement there is now. Alright, so here we are back sitting in the rig, and if you remember from the very start when I showed you the braking and how much flex there was in the old chair, I've got Moza pit house open here, and if I just operate the brake and you watch the back of the chair, you'll see how little movement there is now at all. So we'll start off there we go, we've got 20% brake on there. Now previously, if I'd been trying to get a 20% brake, you know, the chair would have been flexing quite a bit, so that's where I was struggling to control low pressure braking. And there we go, that is the brake on 100%, and I don't think there's a lot of movement there at all. And moving through the range, 0, 50, back up to 100, gradually bringing it down. Wonderful. The chair is a lot firmer. It seems to be a little bit higher, I think, as well. The seating position's fine. I don't know if I'll even need to try different orientations of the seat. We'll see how we got on, but at the moment, very comfortable, nice and firm. I did a couple of test laps around Sebring in the Aston Martin hypercar with the motion system activated, and everything feels great. So yeah, I'm very pleased with how it's going so far. So I dare say I'll just have to get used to the difference with the braking now, but hopefully I can get more finite control or granular control on the brakes, which should hopefully help with the lap times and things overall. So yeah, we'll see how we get on. Alright, so what I've done is I've loaded up LMU at Sebring in the Aston Martin. I haven't got any audio on just so that we can talk, but it'll let you see the movement in the rig and the general stability of everything. Alright, so we'll head out. So the motion system's just cupped into life. Coming out this long bit. Don't worry about the limits, we'll just break the limit just to get out. Now we're coming up to the notoriously bumpy first corner. Oh, it helps if I change gear. I'll put my foot back on, not an idiot. Now I'm looking to see that Sebring is notoriously bumpy back, the effect on the motion system. I locked up there, I wasn't listening, I can't listen. Yeah, it's all pretty quiet, there's no rattling, no noise considering it's full motion. Certainly 3 degrees of freedom, a couple of big bumps there, a couple of lockups. Certainly a lot more quieter than it was with the last seat that was all creaky and groaning, and sounds like we've got one maybe loose bolt at the back there. I'll maybe need to see if I can hand down, or it's maybe just a surface rubbing. But yeah, can't complain with this at all. Feels comfy. I can feel all the feedback through the motion system, all the curves, the slip, like there, I can feel that lock up. Over the curve on the right hand side, you can feel the tilt and rumbles. And we'll come into the fast last corner. And on the brakes, turning the wheels, trail through, and I've spun it up. I've caught it. And there we go. Ace. So, very pleased with that. We'll see how we settle down into it, but that's the new Sabelt SRS seat, deep black, mounted to the GT Omega Prime with the cubic system, QS 210, 3 degrees of freedom motion system. So, very pleased, happy with the upgrade, and I think that's all I really got to say just now. So, thanks for watching, catch you again, and hopefully see you out on track.